Panthers wide receivers. This is one of those, we've been tracking the wide receiver position all preseason, right? To the point where right at the beginning of training camp, we were trying to come up with reasons why so many people were only talking about the wide receiver group. And we were coming up with things like, well, they're still just in helmets, so 7-on-7 and 1-on-1s is kind of the only thing that feels like real football. So, of course, we're all looking to the wide receiving group. And then there were, well, it's so new with Deontay Johnson and Xavier Leet adding to the group, and everybody wants to see if the kind of new toys for the offense to play with are living up to it. And what I kind of settled down into is I think the wide receivers are what most people are looking to level up the offense, right? If you watch last season, there were two things that stuck out about the offense. One, Bryce Young didn't get the time he needed. And two, when he did, they weren't open. But here's the thing. If an offensive lineman makes a really bad play, it's over quick, and it's not like you don't want to put. I'm trying to think of the name of the song, and it's you know the boo 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 doo doo boo 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 doo, that song that like it's
like the Benny Hill stuff.
Yeah, Benny Hill. You don't necessarily want to put that music underneath like a good spin move from a defensive end that gets a sack. But if you put up the most ridiculous plays from the Panthers wide receivers last year, you do want to put the it's like right, Bryce Young scrambles to his left, throws across his body, finds his man on the sideline. He's running up the sideline. He's diving for the fumbles it right before he goes into the end zone. Look at this. Bryce Young rolling to his right, throws an accurate pass. The wide receiver jumps so he catches it and gets a foot out of bounds. It does not count. Like, look at this. For the third consecutive play, he finds DJ Chark open down for the third consecutive play. It's a drop. Like the plays that the wide receivers made or didn't make felt more ridiculous, right? And the most delusional of all thoughts happened quite a bit. I could do better than that. Right? There's nobody that has delusions. Like as rough as Ike Ekwonu was last year, particularly in pass blocking, none of us are out there like, well, if you put me in front of that defensive end, I'd be able to stop him. However, there were a few plays last year where wide receivers got their hands on the ball, like not that outstretched, and they dropped them. And who amongst us hasn't been like, I make that catch in gym class. Like I can do that. So we're watching the wide receivers almost tentatively to be like, I hope they're better than last year, right? Because it's one thing not to be very good. It's another to like be on SportsCenter, not top 10, right? We're trying to avoid that. Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen are what they are. We haven't seen them much this preseason due to injuries, and Adam Thielen gets rest days because he's 30-something years old. They are what they are. They're veterans. They've proven what they can do in the NFL, right? I believe Deontay Johnson has had a 100-catch season.
Yes.
And I know Adam Thielen, he did last year for the Panthers and had a very storied career with the Minnesota Vikings ahead of that. So there's a certain level of, like, cool. Other than that, there's a lot of unsettled, right? Jonathon, Mingo, and Terrace Marshall, and this is where yesterday's game comes into play. Or, Saturday's game comes into play. Did you walk away from that game? And I know you were there, Dennis, and you got to talk to some players. Did you walk away from that game going, all right, they're making the team. Those guys are going to be the depth.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly the vibe I got.
Oh, yeah. It seems like, obviously, you mentioned Johnson, Thielen, Legette drafted.
Which we'll have to talk about.
And then Mingo, I think, was a sure lock. And then Terrace Marshall Jr. has separated himself from all the others.
So there you go. That's your 4th and 5th wide receiver or 3rd and 5th wide receiver for a team that dramatically needs to increase their production in the passing game. Jonathon, Mingo, and Terrace Marshall Jr. And they played, by the way, on Saturday, which, we have 30-something inactives and you're playing. You're probably a little nervous. But it did feel like there was a distinct plan for those two guys. We're going to put you in there. We're going to get you some catches to hopefully put the bad taste of those drops from the first preseason game out of your mind, out of your brain completely. And then once you get that, cool, you're done. Both of them were wearing sweats for the second half. They were not back in their uniform. They were pretty darn chummy with Dave Canales. Right, Terrace Marshall Jr. had a clip that was caught by the cameras of him with his arm around the head coach talking in the second half of that game, and they were going back and forth, looking very chummy. And my first thought was, right, because Terrace Marshall Jr. is on the, at least from the math that you do on the outside, he's on that roster bubble. I don't think that conversation looks that way if Dave Canales was getting ready to cut him. Xavier Legette is another. There's so much unsettled. What the heck do you expect from Xavier Legette? That is a question that I've wrestled with all afternoon. I knew we were going to talk about wide receivers here. I knew we were going to say Mingo and Marshall looked like their spots have been solidified and they were treated as such. And I knew that the other question is, what the heck do you expect from Xavier Legette? You traded up into the first round to draft Xavier Legette, right? You had 33. You couldn't wait. 33 was the first pick of the second round. You couldn't wait overnight. You couldn't wait to see if he was taken 32nd. So you traded up to 32nd to draft him and get the extra year of control on his contract. And now we are halfway through, or actually all the way through camp, with training camp technically ending and moving towards the regular season. I don't know what to expect from that guy. I know a couple of days ago he made a catch over the middle on like a dig route, and everybody got very excited because it was like, ooh, Xavier Legette did something. That was in practice. The other players drafted around him, I don't even intentionally seek out, and I've seen a bunch of highlights. I don't seek out Keon Coleman with Buffalo. I don't seek out Ladd McConkey with the Chargers. But I've seen more from them than I've seen from Xavier Legette. I seek out clips of Xavier Legette. I search his name on Twitter. That's a really tough idea there, right? Because the word out on Xavier Legette, right, what everybody's talking about before the draft is very, very, very physically talented, but it might take him a little bit to get used to an NFL offense, right? He wasn't necessarily running the full route tree at South Carolina with the Gamecocks. And it took him 5 years to pop in South Carolina, right? His first 4 years, he didn't have elite production. His last year, he turned into, some version of Deebo Samuel or something. Like the one of the best South Carolina wide receivers they've had in the last bunch of years. But he was that for 1 year. So it's like if it takes that long to get ready in the NFL, you don't get that kind of patience. And oh, by the way, he's working with a new coach, a new quarterback. Obviously, he's a rookie, knew everything. He's, to me, like, a mystery. I actually just had this conversation the other day. Do you remember Jamar Chase's rookie year preseason?
Got hurt, didn't he? No, he had a bunch of drops. He
forgot how to catch a football. He finished preseason. This is Jamar Chase. He was, I believe, the 5th overall pick, but he had sat out a year for COVID. He didn't play his last year at LSU. So the last time we saw him, he was the best wide receiver in the country for LSU with Joe Burrow. And then he sat out a year. And then his preseason, he had 5 targets and 4 drops. And when I tell you these drops were like progressively worse, it started with like, it's kind of a tough catch. By the end, they were like half treating him like I treat my 3-year-old when we're playing catch. Like underhand, here you go, buddy, don't drop it, put your hands out. Screens and stuff, little smoke screens just to get him a catch, and it was going through his hands. And
like you basically would try and hand him the ball.
Yes, just a long handoff, and he was dropping it. And then guess what he did his first game?
Crazy catch.
Four catches, 104 yards, and a touchdown. And it was like, you know what? I think he remembered how to play. Like, what a weird footnote that's going to be in his career. And he finished with a bunch of yards and a bunch of touchdowns, and he was, set the league on fire. Xavier Legette, we don't even have that to be concerned about, right? It's not like we've seen him and he's not playing well. It's like we haven't seen him. We don't know what we're getting from him. Again, Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, I'm confident in. You know what you're going to get from them. That's the improvement in the wide receiver room. Mingo and Marshall, I don't know if I'm as confident in them, but I'm confident they'll have some kind of role, right? If you go 3 or 4 wide receivers, you're going to see Mingo. I don't know if you're going to see Marshall because I don't know if Legette's going to be there or not. And the other elephant in the room is if somebody cuts a really good wide receiver or somebody that has experience in a Dave Canales offense, you never know if they're going to use that waiver claim to bring in a 6th. Dave Canales was asked if they're going to look outside the current group for their final roster, and he gave some coach speak.
We have to respect these guys' opportunity, and we're calling them out there they're out there the whole entire game. Some great film to evaluate, and we start with us. Start evaluating and competing in our rooms, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Busy day after that. By the way, side note here, just talking about roster decisions. David Newton, ESPN, covers the Panthers, just tweeted out busy day, busy transaction day for the Panthers. I'll give you the updates. Reserve list additions prior to cut. I don't even know what all of this means. Waived injured. There we go. We'll go with waived injured. Lamar Jackson, defensive back, Nebraska.
Oh, okay, that's big.
Yes.
Yeah, because he had a leg injury on Saturday. He played pretty well, too. So that's big. He must be pretty significantly hurt if that's the case.
Tavion Robinson, a wide receiver from Kentucky. Mm-hmm. He's an undrafted rookie that's been on and off the roster. Now this is the second time.
Sure.
Free agent signings. Willie Drew.
There you go.
Defensive back from Virginia State.
Him as well.
Quandre Mosley, defensive back from Kentucky. Sam Pinckney, a wide receiver from Coastal. Jaden Sheridan, a running back from Monmouth. And Chris Wilcox, a defensive back from BYU. The reason why I say the running back, Jaden Sheridan, is Dylan Johnson waived. No recall.
Really?
They gave that guy 18 carries and really leaned on
he played well too.
Had a touchdown, 83 yards, waived today.
Interesting. Okay, that one kind of surprises me a little bit.
And then reserve list additions, reserve injured, prior to cut to 53, has Jake Luton and Anthony Brown, a defensive back from Purdue. Jake Luton, the quarterback. I'm not sure what that means because Jake Luton was already on the team. He played yesterday. So
he played Saturday and he got hurt.
That may have been a waived situation, but it's
so everything's a little bit different in terms of players. Like, for example, Lamar Jackson waived with an injury designation. Another team can claim him, but if he goes unclaimed, he can be placed on injured reserve for the Carolina Panthers. So he must have been pretty significantly hurt if that's the case, which I know we'll talk about defensive backs here coming up. Things are going to be opening up a little bit maybe for other guys like a DiCaprio Boodle.
True. It just seems like, I guess with Jake Luton, he might not be injured as much. But there's some shaking up happening on the Panthers as we speak with the two main ones. I know I just kind of word vomited a lot of things at you. The Lamar Jackson one is interesting, and obviously we're talking about the defensive back for the Panthers who, at least for a moment, seemed like he was a dark horse to get some actual playing time at cornerback. Dark horse, but still in the race. And then Dylan Johnson, just because he looked solid on Saturday. But I think that just means that there was more to like guys like Raheem Blackshear not being active, to where it was like the reason they weren't active is because their jobs were so secure, not anything else.